welcome back. So what we're going to do today is we're going to deploy our ships. Now the first thing I want to do is I forgot something in my last video. So when you're gathering your forces and getting ready to go to a game, there's one more extremely important thing that you need to bring, and that's your damage deck. So make sure you bring that too. I forgot to mention it in the last video. I apologize. Remember your damage deck when you're going to a game. Now what we're going to do is we're going to deploy our fleets. Now the first thing that we have to do before we deploy our fleets is determine first player. Is decided by the player who brings the fleet with the fewest points in it. So usually you have a 400 point list. If one person brings a 400 point list, the other person brings a 395 point list. The 395 point list gets to decide whether they want to be first player or second player. And once you're first player or second player, generally speaking, you are first player or second player for the entire game. There are a couple of upgrade cards currently that change that from maybe a round, but that's it. You are first or second player for the entire game. That's important in terms of objectives, because if you want to be if you're second player, you're going to be using one of your objectives in the game, which we're not going to talk about. We're not using objectives here. But if you're first player, you get to activate first every turn. So you get to use a ship. If you have a ship that's almost going to die, you know you're going to be able to use that the next turn and get your shots in, or do your engineering in order to be able to save yourself. So there's benefits to both. Usually, Armada, the bids are big. People like to be first player. If you like to be first player, you're doing a big bid. By a big bid, it depends whether it's a casual game or a tournament. In tournaments, you could see as much as 20, maybe even more point bids. Casual games, 8, 9, 10 points would be a large bid. If you're thinking second player is fine, you don't have a problem being second player, you'd like to use your objectives, a lot of times those people will get as close to 400 points as they possibly can. Now, because we aren't playing objectives and because this is a learn to play game, what we're going to do is we're going to alternate first player each round. So one side will get first player in the first round, the other side will get first player in the second round. And we're going to determine that with a dice roll. And if you are in a game and you both bring the exact same number of points, the dice roll is what would determine first player for the entire game. Usually what we use is a blue dice. Blue dice have 4 hits on it, and then there are 2 crits and 2 accuracies. So so what we're going to do is our stand-in CIS fleet will have hits to be first player in the first round, and our stand-in Republic fleet will be not hits to see if they're going to be first player in the first round. So we'll roll the dice. It's a hit, so that means our CIS side is going to be first player for the first round. Now, because we aren't using objectives, we want to make the board as even as possible. So what we want to do is we're going to place our obstacles, and we're going to just put the station in the center. Nobody's going to place that one. It's going to be in the center. Station has a positive effect. If you hit it with a ship, you can remove a damage card. If you land on it with a squadron, you can heal 1 hull. Now for the rest, we're going to alternate back and forth. And we're going to have second player place the first one, which is this side. You have to place these outside the deployment zone, which is range 3 from the edge. If you could put it in the deployment zone, you're really restricting where your opponent could be able to deploy. Now you can put it right up to that if you would like. There are 2 different types of obstacles. There are 3 asteroids, which do a face-up crit to hull, which can be very debilitating. The other are debris fields. The debris fields do 2 damage, but that damage can be taken to shields. my view is if you hit a debris field early on in the game, it's not really a big deal. You can repair those shields before you're in the fight. So a lot of times if one of these is in the way of where I want to go, I don't even worry about it. But the asteroids are something that you're generally going to want to avoid. Now you can place these anywhere you want. If you want to put them to try and block your opponent from going to a certain area, you can do that. You can put it on your side so that you know that you can steer clear of it if you're worried about it. If you think you're a good flyer, a good pilot, then you can place it in the center, hopefully that your opponent will hit it. Now these obstacles all have to be range 1 from any other obstacle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little barrier here for my opponent coming towards the station. Now they'll have to come at it at an angle if they want to use it. And then this side saw what my opponent was doing, so we're going to do the same thing to them. And now we're going to go back and forth and place the rest. Okay, we've placed all of the obstacles now. And now we have to place our ships. Our CIS side is going to be first player. So that means they have to place their ship first. When you place a ship, it has to be completely within range 3 of the edge of the board for the starter game. For a full-size game, you're also going to have restricted areas on the end of range 5, but we're not going to worry about that. For the starter game on a 3x3, you get the whole edge and it's range 3. The entire base has to be within range 3. The ship, if it overhangs, that doesn't matter. And the shield dials can actually overhang in beyond range 3. So we're going to do that after we deploy the ship. We have to set its speed. I'm going to set this one to speed 2. Speed 2 is a good average type speed. You can go faster or slower if you wish. And then we're going to alternate back and forth. We're going to go to this side. Now I don't like to place my command ship early. Most people will hold that to last. And that's what I'm doing here. I will set this raider also to speed 2. The raider is standing in for our Consular class cruiser. And now I can either place another ship if I would like, or I can place 2 squadrons. A lot of times people will bring squadrons in order to pad their deployment so that they have more deployments than their opponent. In this case, it's not really going to matter. We have the same number of deployments, but you always place 2 at a time. If you have an odd number and you only have 1 left, that 1 squadron has to wait until everything else you have is deployed, including ships. Now, squadrons, when you place them, they have to be range 2 of a ship. So they can extend beyond the 3 of the back of the board, but they have to be within 2 of a ship. I'm going to place them both on this debris field. Alright, now there's no speed to set for those because they have a set speed already. I'll come over here and I'll put down 2 squadrons on this side. And now I'm going to go and do a couple more placements. Okay, we've deployed our small ships and our squadrons, and now we're going to deploy our command ships. I did not have to hold my command ships to last. I could have deployed them at any point during my deployment turn. I decided to hold them off because I like to get an idea of what is happening on the other side of the board. That's purely my preference. If you want to place your command ship first, then that's your choice. Now I've set speed 2 for all of the ships except for that one raider. I gave it speed 3. So I'm going to deploy this command ship, our Malevolence stand-in, and we're going to set that one to speed 2. And the Victory is actually very close to what the Acclimator is going to be. It's a big front arc ship, and now the Victory is slow, doesn't turn very well, but it has a very wide arc, so on a small board like this, it actually can cover a very large percentage of the board with its arc. That's kind of its benefit for the small board. Victories have a little bit more trouble on the larger board because there's a lot more area to cover. And we'll set him at speed 2 as well. Okay, so all of our ships and squadrons are deployed. All of their speeds are set. The last thing that we need to do is set our command dials. The command dials, there's 4 commands. There is navigation, which lets you change your speed and adds a click to your movement chart, which we'll talk about once we do it. There is engineering, which lets you heal shields and or hull. There is concentrate fire, which is an offensive command that lets you add dice to your dice pool. And then there's squadron, which lets you activate the number of squadrons that are on your ship card. Generally speaking, for myself, a lot of times I like to run nav early on in case something happened in deployment that I wasn't expecting. I'll be able to turn a little bit harder, change my speed, go up or down, that kind of sort of thing. Some people like to run engineering early on, get that token, bank it for later for when they need it, and be able to get one really powerful healing turn in with a command and a token. Concentrate fire isn't something people usually take in their first turn. You're usually not shooting in the very first turn. And squadron is another one that folks usually don't take in the first turn. We could probably get some shooting done with our squadrons here in the first turn, maybe, if we've got overly aggressive. But a lot of times people don't like to do that. Now, when you reveal a command, if you don't want to use it, that's fine. You can take a command token. And for the most part, most commands gives you about half of the full command. Squadron is an exception. A squadron token always lets you activate 1 squadron, no matter what. So the Victory is Squadron 3. With a command, it could activate 3 squadrons. With the token, it can only activate 1. Now, on the other side of that, the Raider is a 1 squadron ship. And so if it activates with a command, it can activate 1 squadron. But if it has a token, it can also activate 1 squadron. So the squadron one with the command and the token can be a little bit variable. The smaller ships get much closer to or the same benefit from the squadron token as they do the command. Although smaller ships tend not, or ships with smaller squadron activation numbers tend not to be ships that you want to be pushing squadrons very much. So now I'm going to go through and set all of my dials to where I want them at the start of the first turn. For 1 command ships, that's easy. I just set it to what I want to happen that turn. For the Victory here, I have a 3 command ship. I have to set all 3 dials now. In the first turn, I'm going to take the first one off the top, reveal it, do that command. Then at the end of turn 1, I reset this and I put it at the bottom of the stack. So I have to set all of my commands that I'm going to use for the first 3 turns here. That can be a little overwhelming for a new player. It's just something that you have to get used to and realize where you think things are going to be in turn 3. Do you think you're going to be shooting and you want to concentrate fire to really get as many dice on the board as you can? Do you think you're going to be taking fire and you're going to want to be healing yourself and running engineering? Do you want to run nav in order to do some avoidance or get your turn into the fight a little bit better? Do you want to run a squadron command to push your bombers out into your opponent? It all depends on what you want to do. It's just the larger command values, you have to think ahead a lot more than the smaller ones. Now, the Nebulon Bs here, I'm expecting the hard cells are probably going to be only one command ship. These are 2 commands, and we're going to stick with the 2 commands because it's part of making the 2 fleets even. So I'm just setting all of these commands to where I want them to be. I did preset them. I just am making sure they're set to where I want them to be. In a real game, you can preset them if you want, but you're allowed, once deployment is over, you can change your command at that point, and that's the only point. After that, your commands are what they are. You know, with the exception of some upgrade cards and all that. That's always going to be the case. But for now, when we set them, that's what we're going to be playing for the game. Okay, so thank you very much for coming again. The next time we're going to get into round 1, start pushing and moving some ships. Our CIS stand-ins are going to go first. Republic is going to go second. And then when we get to round 2, we're going to flip that. I'm going to set a marker so that I remember which is which. If these videos are helpful to you, please like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos. Keep armadaing. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.